All right, good morning, everybody. As we take a look for Driver's Ed Chapter 3, we got just basic vehicle controls. I'm going to talk to you guys like you pretty much know what most of these are. So as we work our way through, we have a few target goals for today. We're going to identify and explain each gauge and warning light and each control used to operate the vehicle. We're going to listen the checks and procedures to get ready to drive and to describe how to enter and exit a vehicle, which seems really silly, but there are certain ways that they do recommend just to keep you guys safe. Okay, so hopefully we can mark off gotched it down here. Okay, or whoa, need a study or botched it. Hopefully we got gotched it after today's lesson. Okay, so a few things that we should be aware is the speedometer. All right, this tells you again how fast you're going. We're in America, so we use miles per hour versus over there in the UK, they might use kilometers. Hey, mate, in Australia. All right. Some of you guys maybe don't know what the tachometer is. That just tells you about your RPMs, your revolutions per minute. So as you press down on the gas, you'll see the tachometer move from one side to the other. And we want to try to stay out of the red. The red is where the engine is revving so bad, so fast that you're going to make the engine like virtually burst at the seams. It's going to get so hot. So bad, bad, bad. Odometer indicates the total number of miles that you have traveled. Okay, so that gives you guys an idea of how many miles you have on the car. So that's basically, so if you're buying this car, you have some idea of wear and tear on the vehicle. You know, if you have something that has 50,000 versus 200,000, you know, something that's had 200,000 has been used quite a bit. Okay. The tripometer is something that allows you guys to reset that back to zero. So it's kind of nice if I go on a long trip, maybe I go to Florida or something, I'll set the tripometer, and I just, you know, like to know for my entire trip, for like I'm out down there for a week and I come back all the way back to Cary, you know, how many miles did I travel for the trip? So that's always nice to do. I also do it after filling up for gas. I have a pretty good idea that, you know, my typical tank is about 300 miles per tank. Not miles per gallon, that'd be awesome, but miles per tank. And it gives me an idea of how my vehicle's running. If it starts going below 300, maybe it's at 250 or 200, I'm not getting the normal 300 miles per tank, then I know something's not right. Okay, so that's another thing that you guys can use the tripometer for. Okay. Fuel gauge, you guys know, to keep the fuel gauge up. Okay. If you are looking at the fuel gauge, you'll notice that there's a little arrow there, and that tells you where the gas cap is. Okay. So if you're trying to fill up, take a look at the arrow. Okay. And I'll show you in one of the next slides here. Okay. Temperature gauge light warns you when the coolant in the engine is running too hot. Again, if you have a leak of some sort or something, you might see that your temperature gauge is going and getting into the red zone, and that is bad. So again, if you see that, you want to turn your engine off, or at the very least, turn your heater on, and that's going to help expel some of the heat out of the engine compartment. Okay. Or your oil pressure gauge light warns you when there's not enough oil circulating at the proper pressure. Again, usually that's because your car might be older and it's burning the oil, or maybe you're past due an oil change and you know you've lost some oil along the way. Maybe you have a leak. Okay, so take a look at those gauges. If you see some warning lights, get that fixed right away, because that's going to cost you thousands of dollars if you don't, and something goes wrong with the engine. Okay. Alternator warning light gauge warns that the battery is not being charged and is using stored electricity. Again, anytime you start your car, that's only with the battery. Once you get the car going, the alternator runs and charges that battery. Okay, well, if there's an issue there and it's not being charged, then you're only using the battery, and eventually you're going to run out and you're going to have to get your car jumped and get a new battery or new alternator. Okay. Brake system warning light reminds you to release the parking brake and warns as the braking system is not working properly. So the first thing is, especially when we do these things called up and downhill parks, we use the parking brake. If you have what we call a manual transmission, and we'll talk more about this later, but if you have a manual transmission or stick shift, you always use the parking brake anytime you park to make sure that it's secure. Okay, parking brake is located in a few different spots. Sometimes it's right there on the side console. You press a button and pull up on it, and you'll see the red brake light go on. Okay, and then press down, you'll see the light go off, and it's disengaging the parking brake. You might also see on the left-hand side, you'll step on it, okay, and that engages the parking brake, and then you can step back on it harder, and that will disengage it, and you'll see that light turn on and turn off, okay? There's an anti-lock braking system light that tells you ABS is working properly. So if you do see the ABS light, that is okay. It's just telling you it's working, okay? Safety belt light reminds us, and we hear that little chime, ding, ding, ding. Okay, that's newer in these last, at least my last 20 years. That wasn't like my first car. I never had no light or chime saying that my light was on. So this is a newer thing. Okay, it gives us a chime that say, hey, put your seatbelt on. Okay, so it's a nice reminder. And then the airbag warning light tells you if the airbags are working properly. Okay. Turn signals. Okay, these tell you that the direction you have to turn the signal. Okay, we always know that pressing down is the left and pressing up is the right. And if you have those on for way too long, usually you'll start hearing some chimes or something come at you that maybe, especially like I'm thinking Three Oaks Road and Route 14 right by Thornton's. That's a very shallow turn. It's not a very sharp turn. So sometimes on those not very sharp turns, those shallow turns, sometimes your turn signals do not shut off. Your high beam indicator, usually that's a blue light. So when you turn your high beams on, you'll see that blue light glows, and that tells you your high beams are on. So anytime you're driving towards a car and your high beams are on, they can't see. So you want to make sure your low beams are on and your high beams are off. Okay, so this is just a generic, and let me move my little head out of the way. This is just a generic little console that you can see here. Okay, so you can see sometimes they're digital, which is kind of nice. Here we have a tachometer. Okay, here we have a fuel gauge. Okay, so that's something that the textbook has given us to show you coolant. Okay, and this is an example. This is my 2010 Chevy Traverse. It's a little bit older, but it gives you the idea. Okay, here you see my tripometer here. Okay, this is my tachometer. Again, we want those RPMs to be, 4,000, 5,000. If we're getting 6, 7, 8,000, we're really pressing down hard on that engine, and you're going to blow the engine. This is my temperature gauge. Okay, so we're going to keep that temperature usually right around 210 is good. Okay, this is my fuel gauge, and you can see that little arrow there by the gas can. Okay, that tells me that my gas tank is on the left, so when I pull up to Thornton's, I know to pull up on the driver's side. Okay, we have our speedometer here. In this case, I just have every 20 miles per hour it's listed, so every tick mark is just the big tick mark is 10, and that's 5, so that's 80, 85, 90, 95, 100. Okay, and these are my gears: park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then L. A lot of people don't know what L is. L is for your low gears, and we'll talk about low gears here in a second. Okay, and this is for my battery to see that it's charging. My alternator. Okay, we know that big round thing in front of me. We should know what that is. I did have a girl come in and say, what's these pedals? What's these pedals down here? Which one's the gas? Which one's the brake? She had no idea. Okay. And I said, we know what this big round thing is, right? And she, we know that's a steering wheel. All right. We know how to use that. All right. Make sure when we're using that steering wheel, we're doing little corrections. Okay. We'll talk more about steering in the next few sections. Selector level and automatic transmission, that might be, again, let me move me out of the way here. Okay, and selector level for some vehicles, big trucks and stuff, they might be right there on the steering column. Okay, some of them might be on the column on the side. Okay, the center console. Ignition switch, sometimes we got to stick keys in there, turn the button. Sometimes we just press a button. Okay. Cruise control is the device that lets us maintain our desired speed without keeping your foot on the accelerator. Again, we're not going to use this around town. This is going to be for long trips. Okay, maybe you're on the expressway. You're going from Cary to Florida over spring break, and you got to be on the road for several hours. Well, you can't just have your foot on the accelerator the whole time. That's going to be, again, a little painful after a while. So when we have enough room around us, there's not a lot of traffic, then we go ahead and put that cruise control on, and that's going to maintain our speed. And it's really easy to turn off. All we got to see if there's cars starting to slow down, we just press the brake and it shuts off the cruise control. Okay, but it's a good way to maintain your speed. It's good for gas mileage. Okay, and it's going to prevent you from going up and down. Okay, maybe you're not paying attention. All of a sudden you look down and you've been pressing the pedal, and all of a sudden you're not pressing it hard enough, or you're pressing it too much and you're going 90 and a 70 or something like that. So it's nice to maintain your speed, get up to the speed you want to go, and then maintain it. And again, that's really good for your fuel efficiency. Okay, so this is what we have nowadays. I mean, if you look, we got a nav computer, we got DVD player, CD player, what have you. Okay, we have all these buttons now for their stereo and radio and cruise control right there on the steering column. Okay, when I was a kid, that's not how it was. All right, so they've really come along these last 20 or so years to update these cars and make them almost like a cockpit. Okay, it's really very nice, and keeping our hands on the wheel with all these buttons that they have on the wheel makes us safer drivers. Okay. Also, you can see that little ignition switch. Some people have only put keys in the ignition nowadays. Now it's just you have the key in your pocket. You never take it out of your pocket. And you just press the button and boom, giddy up. All right, so vehicle controls are parking brake. Again, this keeps the vehicle in place when it's parked. It's located either on the far left of the pedals or the center console. We talked about that. If you have a manual transmission or what we call stick shift, you're going to need the clutch pedal. Okay, and that's located on the left-hand side of the brake. We obviously know what the foot brake pedal is. It's our brake pedal. Push this slow to stop our vehicle. If you ever have to slam on the brakes, okay, we ask you, especially most of our cars now have ABS, slam on that brake, maintain that pressure. You're going to feel, you're going to feel that. That's normal. That's the ABS kicking in. Okay, and we'll talk more about ABS as we go along. And then obviously we know the accelerator pedal. Okay, pushing this will increase our speed, make us go faster. Okay, but be careful. Police officers are out there making sure that we are staying within the speed limit. Safety belts. Always wear that safety belt anytime the vehicle is in motion. Okay, newer thing in the last 40 years is head restraints. Okay, back in the day they would have a chair that had no head restraints. Well, anytime you get an accident, people would get a lot of whiplash. Okay, so the designers of the vehicles noticed that people were having neck issues and stuff on just basic accidents or small accidents. So they made the chair up go higher so that if you got into an accident, you had support for your neck. Okay. One little other thing is these head restraints do come out, guys. Okay. And you'll see these metal prongs, and anytime you need to, you could smash your window to get out of maybe a sinking car. Okay. We'll talk more about that in chapter 14. You guys obviously know what the horn is. Again, press the horn. Gives you a little sound. Okay. It's located on the steering wheel. You can use the horn a few different ways. You can be the mean guy and go honk and lay on it, or you can be the nice guy and go honk honk. A little double tap. Okay. That's just a nice little, hey, I'm here, versus the big honk. Not so nice. All right, so guys, we have mirrors on our car so that we can see around us the best we can. Okay, we have the inside mirror, which shows directly behind the vehicle, and we have the outside mirror. Now understand that our mirrors are there to help us, but not the only thing that we can use. Okay, so we have to make sure they're, number one, adjusted to help us to see around the best that we can, but know that there are blind spots, and we have to make our shoulder checks from time to time and make sure those are open. Okay, and we'll talk more about signal, checking our mirrors, and then our blind spots anytime we're changing lanes or moving out of a parking spot. Okay. So there's some outside checks that we got to do before we get ready to drive. So anytime you're approaching your vehicle and getting ready to get in, we strongly suggest that you guys walk around the vehicle and just make sure there's no issues. Okay. Double check underneath that you're not leaking any oil. Okay. Make sure your 4 tires are inflated. Okay. Wheels are pointed straight. You want to pull out and all of a sudden find yourself running over the curb. That would be crazy. All right. Make sure there's nothing on your windshield wipers. Make sure your headlights are in good working order. Okay. Especially this time of year with wintertime, you want to make sure your headlights and brake lights are not covered with snow. Okay. So we want to make sure those are clear. Also, ladies, I've seen on Facebook and stuff that you should be careful, with these predators out there, kidnapping women and yada yada. One of the things they do is they'll put stuff on your windshield wipers. So you always want to make sure those are clear before, you start driving. All of a sudden you see something and they say on Facebook or whatever, on Instagram, they say, hey, people start driving and then they get out of their car and somebody's right behind them and then they take them. So be aware of that stuff. I've never seen it, but Facebook says it's out there. Okay, so be careful. So do some inside checks. So as we're getting ready to drive, we've looked around our vehicle. Now we get on the inside, and now we have to be prepared to drive. Now I'm 6'4". Okay, so when I get into my wife's car, some things have to change. Number one, I've got to move my seat. Okay, my wife is 5'0". I'm 6'4". Okay, I can't even get into her car, so I actually have to have the car seat move so that I can get in. Okay, now my vehicle doesn't have an automatic chair, but her new Honda 2018 Honda Odyssey, as I open the door, everything starts going into my settings. It's awesome. It's beautiful. So if you ever get a car, see that they have that, especially if you're super tall and your wife's super short or vice versa. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. Okay. So the first thing you guys should always do, get in there, adjust the seat. Make sure everything is the way you want it for the seat, that you can reach the pedals. Okay. You should be 10 inches away from your steering wheel. Okay. The worst thing that happens is people get into the driver's ed car and they start messing around with all these mirrors, and then they go and try to reach the steering wheel or the pedals and they can't reach anything. And then they got to adjust the steering wheel, or they got to adjust the seat. When you adjust the seat, all the mirrors now are all messed up. Okay, so number one thing, get into a car and get the seat the way you want it. Okay, then get the steering wheel the way you want it. Okay, and then we got to make sure that our mirrors are adjusted. Okay, and our head restraint. I always need to put my head restraint up, because if not, I could get that whiplash that they talked about. Okay, and then before you pull out of any parking spot, make sure everyone, including yourself, has your safety belt on. Okay, so some shifters. A lot of us know what these are. P is for park. Okay, anytime we're parking the car. R is not because you're a pirate, it's because we want you to reverse. Okay, so we want to go backwards. N is for neutral. Okay, so then there's no driving power, there's no engine power, so your car will move forward or backward if you're on a hill. Okay, and D is for drive. Okay, anytime you guys are shifting, make sure your foot is on the brake before you're shifting out of park. And the reason is, anytime you shift into reverse or drive and you let your foot off the brake, you will either go backwards if you're in reverse, or you will slowly go forward if you're in drive. So we want to make sure our vehicle is not moving while we're shifting. Okay. So again, I will say it again. If you put in reverse and let off your foot off the brake, it will start going backwards. And if you put it in drive and you let your foot off the brake, it will slowly start going forward. Okay, so be aware of that. Okay, and then the last one is low position, your low gears. You have L1, L2, and these positions allow the engine to send more power to the wheels at lower speeds. This is really good if you have a big trailer behind you. Maybe you're hauling a boat. Maybe you got a camper. Okay, and you need to get going off the line. Okay, got a heavy load behind you. Maybe you're moving. Okay, so you want to put it in the low gears, and that's going to get the car moving a little easier. Okay, puts more power to those wheels without spinning the wheels. Okay, also there's maybe you're in the snow and you're having troubles getting going. Put in a low gear, that should help you out. The other reason why you'd use the low gears is maybe you're in Colorado and you got all these mountains, okay? If you're going down a really steep grade mountain, okay, what you don't want to do is be riding on the brake and pressing the brake the whole way down. Eventually, those brake pads are going to be rubbing up against those cylinders. Those calipers are going to be squeezing, okay, and eventually creating that friction. And eventually, those pads are going to get so hot and greasy they're not going to be working. It's called brake fade. So one of the things that you can do is you can do what's called engine braking and use your engine to slow you down. So you can go from drive to your lower gears, and that will slow you down using the engine. Okay, so that's why we use the L's for low gears. Okay, so our steering wheel, make sure you're in a comfortable position. Okay, we talk about 9 and 3 off to the side. Okay, mom and dad maybe learned 10 and 2. Okay, but mom and dad maybe learned on something that didn't have a airbag. Okay, if you put your hands up here at 10 and 2 and you're driving and all of a sudden airbag goes off, now you're punching yourself in the face. Versus your 9 and 3, the airbag goes off, your hands aren't going right into your face. Okay, giving you big black eyes. So nowadays, if you look at the screen, 9 and 3, usually they put nice little areas for you to put your thumbs in. Okay, nice cushy area right there at 9 and 3. Okay, talk about steering the vehicle, have an aiming point. Okay, make constant corrections, little corrections. Okay, not big corrections. You'll get the car swaying back and forth. And again, look ahead, have an aiming point, and watch out for hazards. Okay. So putting the vehicle in motion, most of us have done this before, so this is nothing new. Press firmly on the brake, again, anytime you're shifting. Shift the vehicle into drive, and then turn your signal on and check traffic in your rear view mirrors and look over your left shoulder. So you hear me say SMB, signal, mirror, blind spot. Okay, when the roadway is clear, please release the brake and gently press on the accelerator, moving it away from the road. Okay, so we signal, we check our mirrors, we check our blind spot, make sure it's safe, and we gently get into traffic. Once you're driving, you're probably going to have to cancel your signal because it won't shut off automatically, so you just touch it and it will turn off. Okay, and then once you reach your desired speed, let up on the accelerator. When you're stopping the vehicle, check traffic in your mirrors. Anytime I press the brake, I'm always curious about the people behind me. Are they looking like they're braking? Okay. So if I'm braking and I check my mirror, okay, and they're not stopping, one thing you can do is double tap your brake and that will put your brake lights on. Okay. So gently press on the brake pedal, gradually press on the brake until the vehicle is stopped, and ease up just before stopping. Okay. You want it not to be abrupt. Okay, so sometimes you have to, what I call, feather it, get down low, let off, and then get back on it. And that's going to help the momentum in the car slow down a little bit so you're not like going like this and making Mr. Gears throw up. Okay. Keep your foot on the brake if the vehicle is still in drive. Again, if you let off the brake, the vehicle will start up again, start moving. So again, keep your foot on the brake. Driving a manual transmission, a lot of you guys have never done this before. Some of you have never driven a regular car, so the chances of you driving a manual is probably slim. But if you guys ever have the opportunity, I strongly suggest that you learn. Okay, so manual transmission is also known as what we call stick shift. This is requiring us to manually move from one gear to the next. Okay, so you want to make sure your parking brake. Always make sure that you set your parking brake with a manual transmission vehicle. If you, again, put this into park and you don't put it into gear, then that thing is going to move on you. So we want to make sure we secure it a few different ways. We put it into gear, then we put our parking brake, because if it gets out of gear, it will start rolling on you. Okay. You must learn how to coordinate using the clutch with the accelerator and gear shifter. So you have to use those three things. Okay, there's a friction point. This is where you feel the engine take hold and start moving your vehicle. So that's with your clutch. Okay, so you're going to put the clutch in, you're going to put it into first gear, and then you're going to gently let off the clutch. And at some point, you're going to start feeling the car friction, that's what we call the friction point, and the car's going to start moving. At that point, that's where I got to put on my right foot and press the gas and propel the car faster. If I don't press on the gas and let off the clutch completely, the car will stall. Okay? So there's definitely a certain way to do this, and then you have to get the experience to do it. So there's a friction point. So push in the clutch with our left, okay? Put it into gear, and then gently let off, and the car starts propelling at the friction point, and that's when I got to get onto the gas and release the clutch gently. And you hear the little car whine. Push in the clutch, put it into second, gently start rising off the clutch with the left foot, and then give it to gas, and then starts propelling forward. And then it starts going, put into third, clutch down, put into third, and then it's the same process over and over. And then you get to start it over again and over and over. It's a fun thing. It takes a little bit of time. I think that was the most in tune I've ever been driving a vehicle, because you have to know what gear you're in. You have to know what the traffic situation. You're always focused on the road. You've got to know what gear you're in. You can't be sitting there eating a Big Mac, drinking a soda, and be driving a stick shift vehicle. That's just not happening. Okay. So it says most manual transmission vehicles have 4 or 5 gears. I had a stick shift pickup truck, and that's what it had, 5 gears. And obviously the reverse. The lower gears are for slower driving, and the higher gears are for expressway driving. All right. Downshifting is just shifting from a higher gear to a lower gear. So going from 5 to 4, 4 to 3. And again, that's going to slow you down a little bit. Again, that's called engine braking, downshifting with manual. So this is a basic idea what the transmission looks like. So first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Okay. And we'd only use reverse if the car is stopped, and so on. Okay. Using a clutch, it says always press pedal to the floor before starting the engine, before shifting, and before coming to a stop. There's a very distinct smell if you're riding the clutch, okay, and that means you're resting your foot on the clutch. This is bad, and this is going to cause wear and tear on your clutch, and your clutch will actually start what we call burning the clutch. So there's a very distinct smell if you've been riding on the clutch too much, all right, and it's very expensive to replace. It costs a few $1,000 to replace each clutch, so you want those to last as long as possible. Okay, so don't keep your foot on the clutch pedal. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. Okay. Hopefully, we're pretty good with identifying the gauges and warning lights, the checks and procedures. And then the last thing we want to talk about is entering and exit the vehicle. And that's what we're going to do on our next day together. So, you guys have a great day. See ya.